Welcome to Put Lyd On It, a virtual event series about business, wealth, mindset, success, finances, and many other topics that can help entrepreneurs. Thank you for joining us in this webisode, where as always, we strive to in business. And now, here's your host, Lydia Desnoyers.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this month's webisode of Put Lyd On It. I am your host, Lydia Desnoyers, and I am excited about today's discussion because as a CPA and financial person, marketing is not my strength. And so I have two amazing speakers joining me today to talk about storytelling in marketing and how to keep your audience and the customers engaged. And so I welcome Tamika Bickham and John Hinson on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Two amazing people who are great at storytelling and marketing. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tamika, I'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, how you got started. Reign is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Lydia. My background is in journalism. So storytelling is really a part of who I am and has been a part of my career really since the beginning. I always say that I got into journalism as a local TV news reporter because I love storytelling, and I got out of the business because I love storytelling. So I've really pivoted that background and those skills for telling stories about our community to doing it for brands and businesses who really want to build deeper organic connections with their audiences by telling stories about their own brands.
I love it. Thank you so much. And we're going to go so deep into that. John, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm John Hinson. I am the editorial director here at Spotlight Branding. We provide content marketing services for lawyers and financial pros. And even on the personal side, I just tell stories a lot. I've actually written 20 books just as a side hobby because I don't really have much of a personal life outside of that, but that's another story for another time. But it's all about stories. And I love being able to humanize things and present things in a way that people can relate to. So I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. And you said a very, I think, probably a critical word, humanize. So tell us in layman's terms, or, you know, for someone who's just like storytelling, like reading a book, what does that mean? What does that mean when it, in terms of a business and entrepreneur? What does storytelling mean?
Yeah, so I think just kind of the culture that we live in right now, people need to feel like they relate to something and can, you know, have that connection. And so being able to tell a story and being able to tell a story the right way, because I think there's definitely a wrong way to present your business and present stories that can actually turn people away. But just being able to tell a good story can do a whole lot to create like an emotional connection and really make it, you know, seem less like a business transaction and more of a personal relationship that you're developing with people.
Yeah, absolutely. I would add that you brought up a good point, John. So many consumers, especially younger consumers, want to do business with brands that they believe in, where they feel like values are aligned. So through telling stories, you can help showcase, hey, what your values are, what you stand for, what you believe in, because that is important for the consumer.
Awesome. So I'm hearing that it's looking for that personal connection. Now, you know, when I think about that, one of my apprehensions with social media is like, you know, we've always been taught keep business, you know, and personal lives separate. What are some challenges that you've seen in terms of storytelling and challenges that you've seen with clients that with storytelling? What are the biggest challenges that you've experienced, and how do you overcome them?
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely add to that because part of our framework is definitely, like we say, get vulnerable. And so many businesses and business owners don't want to do that because they feel like, hey, like just like you said, keeping the business separate from the personal. And I think everybody has a different comfort level when it comes to that. But what can you share? Your business has a story. And if you have a personal brand, it's an extension of you. So determining what that comfort level is and understanding that people don't just buy products and services, they're still buying you, the person behind the business. They're still doing business with a person. So how can you pull that out and share the story behind why you do what you do? And I found that so many businesses and entrepreneurs are providing this service or a product for a reason. And something has happened in their life or an experience that they've had is the reason why they do what they do. So showcase that why.
Yeah, and to kind of build off that and the previous point that I made in terms of a right and a wrong way to tell stories. I don't know if either of you are familiar with Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand, but he basically lays out kind of this traditional story arc where you have your protagonist, you have an obstacle or some sort of challenge that they're facing, maybe it's the antagonist or something. But then you also have this third element known as like the guide. So, you think like Lord of the Rings, Frodo is your protagonist, your main character, but then Gandalf is the guide and he's helping Frodo along, all that kind of stuff. And one of the things, especially that I've seen in the legal industry, is that lawyers tend to make their story and the story that they're trying to tell all about themselves. It's like, hey, look at how great I am. Look at how many cases I've won. Look at all the money that I've won for my clients. And that doesn't resonate because the protagonist of the story is not the lawyer. It's the audience. It's that member of the audience who has that issue. The lawyer is the guide. The lawyer is the Gandalf or the Yoda, and they're there to guide the individual along the way. And so when you make that change, then it changes your entire marketing message. And then that's where you start seeing a lot of the benefits of incorporating these stories into your marketing.
Got it. Tamika, what are your thoughts on that? Because, I'm hearing there's a difference between, because when I thought of storytelling, I thought of showcasing all the things that we do. And I've seen lawyers who showcase how many cases they won and all that stuff. So what are your thoughts on that? What is a good strategy? We talked at the top. He said, for attorneys, it is more challenging. And the reason we're talking about attorneys for our audience, obviously, my firm, we focus primarily on women-owned law firms. So I'm really, interested in this as this being a resource for our clients and stuff. So what are the challenges that as attorneys that I would imagine as CPAs we may be subject to?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It can definitely be challenging for attorneys, especially because everything is about cases and serving their clients. I would say that there are definitely different types of stories you should be telling in your business. Like there's your founder's story. And then there's your business's story. And then there are all of the stories of those that you serve. So there's multiple ways to tell your story. I think that all falls into like the general big umbrella of storytelling. But I could give an example of an attorney, actually, that was a woman-owned law firm that we worked with on developing her messaging and content strategy. And she was in business law and really enjoyed working with startup entrepreneurs and growing with them and seeing them grow their businesses. And as I dug a little bit deeper and started to peel back the layers, I learned that she was in big corporate America as, general counsel. And, when 2008, 2009 hit, she lost that job and started her own law firm in her basement with one client, and, as a single mom with two young boys. And little by little, she built that business and understands what new entrepreneurs go through. And I think that's so key because it wasn't just a big law firm that's removed from what goes into entrepreneurship and starting it up and getting it off the ground. She's been there and understands what that's like. And I think being able to communicate that helped build a connection with those new businesses who are starting out because they relate to her story, especially going through losing a job or taking that leap and wanting to start their own business.
Thank you so much for that. Because we're talking about connecting to the audience, right? So how important is it to develop let me ask you, is it important and how important is it to develop your niche, to know exactly who your audience is, to know how to connect to them? Because like you said, it's different stories that you can be telling. So what is that process to determine how to go about storytelling? I'm sorry. Anyway.
I'll go. Yeah.
I always do that. I'm just looking like, so whoever wants to answer, but let me help you out. Put you on the spot there, John. Go ahead.
No. So I think, being able to understand, understand that intersection of where your story, aligns with theirs, so what are the things that are keeping them up at night? You talked about niching down. There's that path to figuring out what it is that you enjoy doing best and what you want to be seen as the expert in. And when you do that, now you can start tapping into the questions, the fears, the anxious moments that people are feeling, whatever they're facing, that you can help with. And that's where that intersection is, that then you can start tailoring your marketing message, the stories that you're telling, and especially like, your founder story, for example, you can share it like, hey, I've been where you are. I know how to get you from point A to point B. And so when we talk about door lawyers a lot, where it's just, they take any case that walks through the door. They're, maybe one day they're doing an estate plan. The next day they're, doing business formation. Another day they're helping someone with a divorce. That, that's not going to help you resonate with people, because there's not a single area or an area or two that you can really focus on. But, Lydia, like you said, like niching down, finding the one or two areas where you really enjoy, that's important. You have to enjoy what you're doing. But, the things that you're good at, and then going out and finding, showing that you understand what's keeping people up at night. And then that's where the stories and your overall marketing message can really make a big impact.
Yeah. And I like that we mentioned earlier on, being careful how you tell stories, because you could turn certain people away. But I would also say, don't be afraid of who you'll turn away, because when you share your story, what you believe in, what you stand for, you will call the right people in.
Right.
And the wrong people will leave.
Right. That's a great point. I think we should kind of spend some time on that, because that is, I think, a hiccup for a lot of women. Like I said, I work with a lot of women, is that, this idea or this fear that lives within us, where we're just like, oh God, we might lose clients. We might turn people away. We might all that stuff. And you mentioned something really profound. Is just like, well, the right people will come. You are going to turn away some people, but they're not the people you wanted in the first place. So, how have you, how have you worked people through that? I've ever tried to figure out the wording. Work people through that hiccup or that mindset.
Yeah. So,
John.
Yeah. Sorry. For us, it's all about the kind of content that you're creating, and in working people through that mindset. Kind of to your point, it's your marketing. It really has two goals. It's one, to bring in leads, but it's also to bring in the right kind of leads. So yes, your marketing should absolutely repel people. And in order to kind of marry those two together and make sure that you're bringing in the right kinds of people, for us in our strategy that we believe in, it's about the kinds of content that you're putting out. So making sure that, you're answering the common questions that you get a lot of times. Think about what people are coming to your office for, what kinds of cases are you taking the most often, answer all of the questions around that. And that way you're elevating yourself as just this credible, authoritative source that's also making this emotional connection with people, because you're demonstrating that you understand where they are at that moment, not necessarily focused on what you've done in the past. Like, I mentioned before, like, you can mention how much money you've won for people, but people care more about what you're going to do for them more than what you've done for other people in the past.
Right. And in fact, sometimes that could be a trap, right? Because now people are going to come in expecting, like, you want $500,000 for that person. I want that too.
Right.
So I'm sorry, Tamika, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to add that also thinking about what feels good to you in your gut. If this is your business, your baby, your brand that you've built, and especially if it's a personal brand, I think it has to feel good to you, whether like from the images that you put out there, if it's video content that you're sharing. It all has to feel authentic and real and good to you. And then you'll bring in more of those right people. And I think when it comes to content creation, content marketing, telling your story, just it has to be something that you're comfortable with. And not everyone is comfortable showing up on video or getting super personal or looking a certain, like something I hear is like, I want this to sound and seem professional. Well, what does that mean to you?
Right.
Determining like that means something different for everyone. And whatever that means to you, there's a whole lot of people out there that means the same thing to them too. So I think if it feels good to you in your gut, you'll attract more of those people that are in line with how they see that too.
I love that. It's a good point. Because I mean, you have to go in with your authentic self, and that's how you relate. So you mentioned something, videos. How critical is it, for this story? Like, is it required? Do you have to do videos? Do you have to do, Instagram lives, TikToks? Do you have to do those things to be effective with storytelling?
I love this. I will say it's different for everyone, right? You have to do something that you feel comfortable with. A lot of people aren't comfortable showing up on video. If there's a way that you feel comfortable on video, I would say it is better than, let's just say, using the written word paired with images to share a story. Why? Because people can feel your energy, your tone, how you communicate. They get a much more feel of your authentic self, because that's coming through on video in a way that it can't in other ways, as if you were reading it on a page. So I do always encourage video. I come from a video background, so I'm a big fan of that. But I'm also someone who doesn't really go live. I like to pre-record and edit things down. So I think it's about determining what feels best for you, because whatever does is the thing that you will continue to do, show up, and be consistent with, which is so key in marketing as well.
Consistency, yeah. John, you were going to say you had some thoughts on that?
Yeah, especially, obviously we work with lawyers, but I mean, even just like any other kind of like white collar professional service, people have some of these preconceived notions about the kind of person that you are. A lot of people are really intimidated by that, especially when you see a lot of commercials where it's like, oh, I'm this bulldog lawyer, I'm going to get money, blah, 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 and it's like, and in my experience, like 99% of the lawyers I've seen aren't even like that at all. But so when you're able to use video, whether you have a social media presence or you just have like some a library of videos on your website, people being able to allow people to see your mannerisms, hear your voice, but then also listen to the stories and the answers that you're giving goes a long way towards really breaking down a lot of those barriers and really gets people comfortable with working with you. So they feel like they've already met you and established a rapport with you before they ever step foot in your office.
Right.
I was laughing, John, about the about the bulldog lawyer, because I had one of those and he was actually a bulldog. They do exist. They do exist.
Yeah.
And he was, I want to seem like a bulldog. I'm like, well, you are.
Right. All right, let's do this. Let's roll with it. So both of you guys mentioned. So Tamika, you use the term consistency. And John, you were talking about pretty much consistency as well, and showing up. What is the time commitment? I'm speaking from personal experience. Like I'm always telling my students, like I don't have time to record videos. Like I'm working on my clients' books. Attorneys are working in they have trial to prepare for and stuff like that. What is the time commitment? And if that's a challenge for people, how do they overcome that?
Time is always, right? None of us have enough hours in the day. I think it's whatever you can commit to. I think every business owner at some point gets to a place where they know they need to commit that CEO time, which should include your marketing. And if part of that strategy is creating video content, try to batch that content and set aside one time a month or one time every 2 weeks, where maybe you spend an hour recording some content. And if you can have someone who supports you in that, whether it's, you know, your own team member or an agency that you're working with, they can help streamline that process and help you plan a content calendar from a production schedule to a post-production schedule. So it can be really whatever you want it to be, but I think when you set that, like, start small so that it is something you can commit to, so that you are able to be consistent with it.
Love it.
Yeah,
Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's two things. One, it's delegate it. And I mean, I'm not even saying you have to hire us or like, just delegate it. But if you can't do that, if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to apportion budget to do that, then it's really it's honestly not as much of a time commitment as you might think. I think that there's that initial fear of the unknown, especially if you don't consider yourself a very tech savvy person. But I mean, we champion DIY marketing here, and there's an easy way to just pull out your phone, especially like the newer iPhones are super high quality cameras, good audio. You can set up your camera, you just prop it up against the wall or hold it up like this and shoot a 2-minute video answering a question, telling a story or something, you know, tell a client story, you know, without getting into any unethical details or whatever. But and you can take that 2-minute video, publish it to YouTube, clip it and make an Instagram reel out of it, make it a 2 or 3 part TikTok video series, promote those on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. You know, you can take a 2-minute video and create dozens of pieces of content that you can promote and spread out over a week, 2-week period, all from, 5 minutes of shooting, 10 minutes of editing and posting. And so it's not a huge time commitment to just start creating a consistent presence.
Got it. Good point. So for those of us, because even hearing you, I'm just like, wait, I have to edit? What tools do I use? What would you say, who would be the team members that you would need, or what are the functions that you would need to consider when embarking on this storytelling journey? So we talk about, Tamika, you mentioned like pre-production, post. I was like, what? So what does that, like, just if we could break it down for somebody and simplify it for someone who's really interested in this and just their first time hearing about this, can we break it down a little bit and like what that process is like? Who would be the ideal team that they can, you said delegate, which I'm a big fan of delegating. Who would I be delegating what to?
Well, I can definitely tell you about our process, and even mine with having a weekly podcast that we produce. So it depends how in depth you want to get. But again, if you're starting, right, like this can sound like a lot. Keep it simple. Number one, I would say, is definitely your messaging. What are you communicating? Right. And if you want to hit a couple of different topics, let's say they're educational type of videos, and you're going to sit down at one time and say, talk about 4 topics, one that could run each day of the week, 1 week, each week of the month. Determine ahead of time, what are those 4 topics you want to discuss, and kind of you can lay it out in Excel or whatever kind of content planner you want to use. And then from there, sit down. Something that I know is helpful for some, if you don't feel prompted or comfortable, just kind of sitting in front of the camera and doing it yourself, is either have a friend, or if you're delegating to a marketing assistant who's familiar with video, who could be on the other side, whether that's through, a Zoom, whatever type of tool you want to use, who can prompt you by asking questions around the topic that you want to hit, so that it comes across a little more natural in how you deliver it. And then ideally that marketing assistant, or if you have a video editor, can help with that post-production and really kind of hitting a beginning and an end point if you want an open lower third, meaning, show your name and title at the bottom, or if you're even featuring a client or a client story, their name and title, and a close with a call to action, let's say, at the end of that clip. And really, I think you can find that if you wanted to keep something like that in-house, in a marketing assistant who can handle that kind of pre-production as far as helping you plan the message, that production, meaning sitting there and helping you record, and then that post, production and editing it down and determining where you want to place that and have it scheduled and push out on the days or weeks that you want it to go out.
That is so helpful. Like it really helps. I work with my clients when we have like these big goals. It really helps to put very like actionable steps and list them out. It makes it a little more easier to digest. John, from anything you would like to add to that, or?
Yeah, so there was one very important point that Tamika didn't mention, and I'm glad she didn't because it's something that I've seen a lot of people think that they have to do. She talked about, planning out your messaging, but one thing that she didn't say was script out your answers. And one thing that I see a lot of is that, look, a lot of professionals, attorneys especially, very perfectionist minded. They want to make sure it's absolutely perfect every single time. And they want to make sure that every single word is correct. And so they'll script it out. But what that ends up doing is when you're doing your video, it sounds like you're reading your script because more than likely you're not a trained actor. You don't, you're more focused on reading the words than you are on your tone and your inflection and everything like that. And so all of a sudden, what could have been a very natural, conversational, informal video now feels very robotic and ends up playing into a lot of the stereotypes and preconceived notions that people had. And you may end up doing more harm than good. So when you're doing these videos, keep it natural, be yourself, let your personality shine through and, use it as a tool to get to know, to allow your audience to get to know you.
Right. So even if you mess up on a word or something, just keep it going. Right?
Yeah, it's totally fine.
It's natural. I love that you brought that up because I hate scripting. I mean, there's a time and a place for it, but even with, whether it's on my podcast or with our clients, they want to know what are the questions you're going to ask. I'll take it a step further and say, I don't share the questions unless you really like, if you beg me, fine. Okay, I'll share the question. But I really don't, because what happens, even if you're not writing out your answer, which I've seen people do in advance of an interview, you are already thinking about how you want to respond and you're not getting the most authentic response from that person. So, it even goes for in a live interviewing situation, like how before this chat, we didn't really talk about the questions we wanted to, because the first time you'll usually get the best response. So you don't want to talk about the thing and then go back and ask it for the real thing.
I am so guilty of that. I mean, I always want to know what the questions are going to be ahead of time. And it's crazy because when the client's in my office and they're asking, I'm like, like just talking about it, it just comes so naturally. But it's like once I see like the real red light recording or whatever, I'm like, so I can relate to that. And so I guess it's just one of those, be graceful, show yourself grace, rather, is what I'm trying to say, and allow yourself to make mistakes, because we are the professionals and we know what we're talking about, and just we get shy every now and then. So we talk about being able to delegate maybe in-house to a marketing assistant or using an agency such as the agencies you two work with. What budget might be a big thing, right? I mean, when we see like these nice videos or TikTok, so it's a time commitment and also a budget commitment. What are your thoughts on that? How would you get, how would you get somebody who's like, I don't even want to look into this. I know it's going to cost me so much money that I just don't have. What are your thoughts on that conversation about budgeting for storytelling?
I would say, do you have more time or do you have more money? If you don't have as much money, just be willing to commit the time to doing some more of this yourself, or managing the team members yourself, right? Be producing this work. But if you have less time, be prepared to spend more money so that you can totally outsource that and have the management of, production happen for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of piggyback on that. I think unless you feel super comfortable doing it, you enjoy doing it a lot, it's one of those things that it's probably better to delegate with, whether you have a full-time person in-house or you're hiring a vendor. I can say that a vendor probably, depending on the size of your market. I know Miami, someone doing this position full-time is probably what, 60, 70,000 a year job at this point. Vendor probably going to be a third of that cost. And even then, even if you have both, allow your marketing person to focus on more outreach, more lead generation, and stuff like that. And that way you can get even more mileage out of the people that you're working with.
Right. Right. I try to my clients think of the cost of not doing it, right? What you're missing out on and or the cost of doing it yourself, right? Because the time you should be spending on preparing for trial or, winning that case for your client, if you're spending it trying to edit videos and that's not your area of expertise, then it may end up costing you more. So that is that. Now we have less than a minute left. This is fun. I went by so fast. I tell you, I love doing this. We get to talking and it just kind of flows. So now that we're ready to wrap up, what are like maybe the top 2-3 things that you would love our audience to walk away with from this webisode? John, I see you on the top there.
Okay. Yeah, I can start. So for me, honestly, the biggest thing is just remember that you are not the hero of the story. Your audience is, and you are the guide. You are the one that's helping them overcome the challenge and the obstacle. And I think if you refocus that with your marketing and your messaging, even the imagery on your website and everything like that, I think that that's going to make a huge impact on how you end up marketing yourself and your firm.
Love it.
Don't play the hero.
I like that. I would say just remember that your story, your messaging should always be the heart of your marketing strategy. That really has to come first and should feed everything else, all of the channels that you're putting content out on. So if you have to start anywhere, you're kind of figuring out, hey, there's all these different marketing things I can do, make sure your messaging, your why, your story is solid first, and that will give you the foundation you need to build out everything else. So I would definitely say start there. Number 2 would be try to find a way to make it visual, however that's comfortable to you. And then from there, figure out kind of, this is a little bit off topic, but related when it comes to story, figure out those other stories and partners that you can tap into that will help you further share the message that you can kind of cross collaborate and cross promote with.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. You two were amazing, great storytellers. Anyone's interested and you want to discuss maybe working with one of these two, their contact information is right here. You follow us on Instagram or social media, or your information will be there, and hopefully people will reach out and let's start telling our stories and be comfortable with it. Thank you so much for joining this webisode of Put Lyd On It. Everyone have a wonderful day.